Welcome to the IDD Get to Know Me Special Olympics edition. I'm your co-host, Victor.
And I'm your co host, Melanie.
In this edition of the podcast, we will be diving into some of the topics important to the Special Olympics community.
Before we start, let's explain what IDD means.
Great idea! IDD stands for intellectual and or developmental disabilities. You will hear from us, people with IDD, and experts on specific health topics. Today's topic is mindfulness and the importance of mindfulness for Special Olympics athletes. We will be hearing from 5 different guests. First guest, Sue Hutton, a researcher and clinician. Then Peter and Cindy Charnish, a mother and son duo. And next, Mark Tewksbury, a Champions Network athlete. And last but not least, Natascha Wesch, a Special Olympics Canada Mental Performance League. We hope you enjoy. I'm super excited to have the one, the only Sue Hutton here with us to share her thoughts about this very important topic. Let's start with some quick introductions. An icebreaker, if you will. Please introduce yourself and let us know the last movie you watched.
Victor, you make everything so fun. The last movie that I watched was actually called A Complete Unknown, and it was the Bob Dylan story that's in the theaters right now. So it was so good. Yeah. Have you seen it?
No.
Yeah. If you're into music and Bob Dylan and New York City, it's really fun.
Let's start things off a little light. Give our listeners an appetizer, if you will. Describe mindfulness and why do you think it is so important for the Special Olympics community?
It's an amazing question. And so mindfulness is so hard to describe. And I don't know if you find this, Victor, but I find that so many people don't really know what it is. But mindfulness is a set of tools and techniques that involve things like focusing on our breathing, focusing on feeling our bodies, relaxing our bodies, paying attention to what we're thinking and letting go of those thoughts, also paying attention to our emotions. Mindfulness is also when we pay attention to ourselves and when we can slow down the thoughts enough to feel the body, notice what we're feeling, then we can pay attention to the people around us. As athletes, if you're on a team, to be connected and have that sense of feeling present and there with your team, or even if you're a solo athlete and you want to be able to focus and be able to stay in the zone, be relaxed and present, but alert, right? Mindfulness is fantastic. And there's so much research that's been done with athletes and focusing on mindfulness. We also know that sport, right? Whatever sport, if you're into basketball or floor hockey or swimming or gymnastics, whatever it is, a lot of it is mental, right? So you can do all of your exercises and you can train and be so strong and be really good at baseball, whatever. But if you're having a bad day mentally, you got nothing in the tank for your sport. Aren't you an athlete, Victor?
I'm an athlete, I'm a basketball player.
So you probably relate to that, eh?
Yeah, I try to relax myself, listen to music just to pump me up.
Yeah.
Like before a big tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, because the mental, yeah, so exactly. So it's really important. But it's the work that we do with athletes, with our mindfulness stuff is helping people to get in the zone, like you're saying, finding your sweet spot on how you connect with it. And you just said it, Victor. You said listening to music, getting you pumped up, getting you feeling positive and ready to go. So that's something that works for you. So we really work with the athletes in our groups to find out how can we help them find their sweet spot on how they can get into the zone, because it's individual for everybody.
What do you think some barriers that athletes might have to overcome start a mindfulness routine?
It's an excellent question, Victor, because I mean, everybody's got barriers, right? So you're asking what are some of the barriers that Special Olympics athletes might have to getting into mindfulness? And I think it's like if you're an athlete or not, it's practicing it, right? Because as you know better than anybody, Victor, because you're an athlete and you try the mindfulness stuff and all these things, it's we know you get the best benefit when you do it regularly, right? Like if you're going to lift weights, if you just do it once a month, it's not really going to work. But if you can do it regularly, then you see. So I love working with athletes or just the people that we do mindfulness with to find their sweet spot on how they can bring it to their daily life. Like right now, right? Like even if in this very moment, if I just take a breath and feel my belly, right? So I'll do that right now and join me. Just, and then on the next out breath, just relaxing wherever I feel I might be holding, maybe the forehead or the jaws or wherever. Just letting myself relax in the moment, right? So finding those ways of doing that and just individualizing it for us.
How do you help Special Olympics athletes stay grounded and motivated in their mindfulness practice?
That's another amazing question, Victor. We take a look for inspiration at athletes who use mindfulness in their sports. Now, it's very sad that we lost Kobe Bryant, the amazing basketball player. But Kobe Bryant, before he died years ago, talked a lot about mindfulness being his secret weapon on the basketball court. That just using 10 minutes a day, Kobe used to say, made a difference, helping him wire his brain to be able to be focused when he's on the basketball court. So we talk about athletes. Bianca Andreescu, the Canadian tennis player, really talks a lot about getting in the zone with mindfulness. Johnny Wilkinson was the soccer player who scored the winning goal. You know, this is years ago in soccer, and he talked about using mindfulness and just bringing it to life on the soccer field for him in that moment before scoring the winning goal, right? So we take a look at some of the inspirations and then we say, okay, if they do that, how can we do it in a way that's meaningful? And we try and find the ways that we can bring it into our sport. And then in our mindfulness groups, we would talk with athletes to describe to us the moments of stress when they are at their track meet or their swim competition or whatever it is. And then we find out how they can use mindfulness in a way that is meaningful to them in their sport.
So, Sue, what are some simple mindfulness practices that athletes, culture families, and caregivers can use in their daily lives?
Should we try a really short one together right now?
I would love that.
Yeah, let's do it. Here's a couple of things that I find very, very useful is connecting with our senses. Okay, so all of us are going to have different senses available to us. And this is a great way of individualizing mindfulness for you. Some people who are blind, for instance, aren't going to be using vision for a grounding tool. Someone who's deaf is not going to be using sound. But let's just explore what's available to us right now. So, what I'd like you to do for those who are sighted, who are listening, just find something in the room that you can look at. So look away from the screen if you're looking at the screen and look at an object and feel yourself looking at that and look at it very closely. Look at the color, look at the shape, how the light falls on it, and just name it in your mind. What is that? For instance, I'm looking right now at a ceiling lamp. And then look at another object elsewhere in the room. And similarly, focus all of your concentration on the vision, the shape, the way the light's on it, the texture perhaps, and name that. And that helps you just be in the present moment. What's it called? Just quietly in your mind. And then I invite you to close your eyes. And now what we're going to do is tune into sound. So this again is for people in the hearing world. So we just did something for those who are sighted, and this one here is for those in the hearing world. So see if you can listen for sounds in the room that you're in. Now, it might just be the hum of your computer. Right now, you can hear the sound of my voice, or when Victor's talking, Victor's voice, but see if there's any other sounds that you can hear and just focus all your attention on sound just for one moment. And can you feel the body relaxing as you do that? And then the next one, just allow the hands to rub gently whatever they're touching. So maybe you can place them on the knees or the thighs. And can you really tune into the feeling of the hands touching something? And then the next thing I'm going to invite us to do is simply a little bit of a tense and release. Can you just tense up your face, like scrunch up your muscles, your arms, your fists, your torso, legs, and feet, scrunching it all up? And let go, let go, let go. Relax, relax, relax. Feel the body getting heavier. And when we do that, we don't do it to the point of hurting ourselves, but we just notice what it feels like to be tense, and then letting yourself be supported by whatever you're sitting on, and continue to feel yourself relaxing like ice cream melting on a hot day. Soften the forehead, relax the jaws, relax the shoulders. And on the next breath in, feel the belly expanding out. And the next out breath, really relaxing. And perhaps even having one calming word that you can say to yourself. Calm, peace, tranquil, relaxed. Just breathing in, saying that word. And then relaxing the body when you breathe out. There's a few different techniques, and you can just stretch the body. And there's a couple of little exercises using your senses. We know from the newest research that the more we can tune in with our senses in the moment, the more our minds will be present, alert, and online with us.
As we wrap up, do you have any advice for Special Olympics athletes, coaches, and or family caregivers who are just starting out in their mindfulness journeys?
Well, make it yours, make it individual. There's not really any way of doing it wrong. The most important thing is just training your mind to come back to the present moment, tuning in on the senses in the way that works for you. And do it together, because when we do it in community, we're going to tend to do it a little bit more. Like, for instance, when you go to the gym, if there's a whole bunch of people working out at the gym, you're not going to stand there going, I'm not going to work out. But when you're at home, it's a whole lot harder to do it. So do it in community. Do it with your family, with your coach, with your teammates, with your friends, and just do even a little tiny bit each day, like maybe do a 3-minute breathing practice, or a meal when you eat with your family, just a brief moment to tune in to what you're feeling. Yeah, I think doing it together is really helpful.
Thank you so much, Sue, for sharing your valuable thoughts today. We have learned a lot from you through your experiences. Thank you very much, Sue. And in closing, we are very lucky to have you on this podcast. Truly, it's been an honor.
Been an honor to be here talking to you, Victor. you're the athlete here, not me. So you're the one that's really doing this stuff. And thank you for doing what you do.
I am excited to have Peter Charnish, a fellow Special Olympics athlete, and Cindy Charnish, Peter's mom and family caregiver. Let's start with some quick introductions, an icebreaker, if you will. Please introduce yourself and tell us what is your favorite sport?
I'm Peter Charnish, a Special Olympic athlete from Brantford, and my favorite sport to participate would be all of them that I do because I do a lot of them. Golf track, softball, curling, bowling. Like I do pretty much most of the sports the Special Olympics offered in Brantford.
And what about you, Cindy? What is your favorite sport?
Well, I like watching a lot of the ones Peter's in. I love watching their baseball. I love watching their curling. Those are probably my two favorite ones. My least favorite one is floor hockey.
I like being in net in it.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
He likes being in net, and I get nervous when he's in net. And it's more of a physical sport, whereas the others are
Mental.
So, Peter, can you tell us what mindfulness means to you?
Mindfulness means a state of being almost. It's like a state of being, like you're in a zone kind of thing.
Yeah,
It helps you focus.
I really like that. How do you do mindfulness to prepare for your sports?
I do visualization, and I do it when I'm doing my sports. Like you visualize your positive thoughts, and you visualize yourself throwing the rock and curling, and you do sort of lotus breath too before you're going to throw a key shot.
Do you ever get nervous when you're in a tournament or anything like that?
Yeah, I get nervous leading up to it, like the days before, even though I've been doing it for so long. So then that's when I do mindfulness to help when it comes time for tournaments or to zone out whatever's happening.
Totally. How do you use mindfulness in your everyday life?
I do the lotus breathing, I would say. So I do it at work sort of sometimes, or do it around home. But that's pretty much what I do.
Cindy, what part of your daily routine with Peter involves mindfulness? What do you use mindfulness together about?
usually when we're together, when we're at home or whatever, and he has things that pop up from work that he comes home with. If he's agitated, I have him focus on the now. Think just now. Block what happened out. Don't worry about what's going to happen in the future. Just think now. So we focus on breathing. We focus on a nice visualization. It was recommended to him was the leaves on the stream, it's called. If he listens to that, that calms him. When he was involved in mindfulness in Calgary with the Zoom during the pandemic, that was extremely stressful for him. And Sue gave him some really good breathing techniques. And usually the one that works for him is the lotus. At one time it was the figure eight. Is that right, Pete? And in the evenings before bed, we focus on leaves on the stream. And roughly he's at the point now, thanks to Sue and the program he was in Calgary, that he's able to use a few of the techniques that work for him without really even
thinking about it.
Peter, can you describe a time when mindfulness helped you stay calm and focused during an important event?
When I'm doing curling, I'm a skip, so I use mindfulness to I use it visualization, but I do sort of a modified version of lotus where I take my time before I'm about to throw a rock. And then track, you visualize yourself jumping over the high jump bar, because that was a hard accomplishment for me to do. And I did it at provincial qualifier and at nationals. He's at the point now where he's been doing it independent almost. He's pretty much independent, and it's only when things sort of go off the rails
that we bring it back.
Or the day before you do it, so that way it makes me less nervous of my meets.
It's excellent that the program that Sue ran for the athletes.
That one, because before that I never knew about mindfulness, but because of that I found out about mindfulness.
She gave him some really good ideas, and the Leaves on the Stream, I was familiar with. I attend some counseling sessions, and I have been working on mindfulness now for over 10 years personally. And so there's another site that I was told about today when I was mentioning to therapist, and she said there's a really great one as well called AnnikaHarris.com, Mindfulness for Children. And when you look at the website, it's applicable to pretty much anybody. So any of those strategies are fabulous.
Do you find you and your son are a better team with mindfulness? Like, if you guys did not have mindfulness, do you find life would be more stressful and your
Yes.
relationship?
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Like, I think I'm a better parent for having experienced mindfulness.
Because that's why it brought everybody within the group. It brought them together, and then even though the studies wouldn't show it because it was during the pandemic and no sports were running, it would make them better athletes. It would make them better mentally. It would make them more focused. It would make them pretty much compete better, I think.
I think it also makes you better
person.
Yes, that's exactly, Peter. It makes you a better person. Even if you start little and take one or two things that work and do it regularly, then with Peter now, I'm so impressed because he'll do it on his own. And I know even my husband has been impressed, and he said since Peter has gone through it during the pandemic, the mindfulness training, he said Peter's team is going to provincials this year.
You're going to provincials for softball.
And so my husband said, it would be really nice if we could have mindfulness training for our softball athletes.
So we're going to do it because I reached out to Sue. Now Sue's going to train the coach.
Hopefully we're going to, because it not only does it make you a better athlete, but it makes you a better person. There are various techniques out there, and it's a matter of finding the ones that work.
Well, thank you so much, Peter and Cindy, for your valuable insight today. We have learned so much from you, and thank you for giving your perspective on mindfulness.
Thank you for doing it.
I'm super excited to have Mark Tewksbury, a former Olympian and Champions Network athlete. Let's start with some quick introductions. An icebreaker. Please introduce yourself and let us know what your favorite sport to watch is.
Sure. So I'm Mark Tewksbury. I was an Olympic swimmer. I think you're never a former Olympian, actually. I think once an Olympian, always an Olympian. Just not current. That's the difference. But once you get that Olympic title. So I'm an Olympian. And I don't know, I guess my favorite sport to watch is actually athletics. I love going to the stadium and feeling that energy of 80,000 people watching the track and field competitions.
Why do you think mindfulness is so important for athletes?
Well, I think that athletics asks you to try to perform at your best. And it's really about being in the moment. And it's kind of interesting because as an athlete, I used to visualize in my mind what my performance might look like and try to imagine it. But then you have to kind of switch gears in competition and just be super present and be in the moment to turn that vision into a reality. So it was wonderful to learn the sort of art of vision, but also the practice of being mindful and in the moment.
What are some of your routines to be in the moment when you're all excited to go and then you want to focus, calm your mind? What does that look like?
Well, even as you're just saying that, I'm like, breathe. So I think, you know, breathing and your breath. I also would have tricks. Like sometimes I would use music just to kind of to set the tone that I wanted in the moment, right? So to make sure that I felt a certain way. And in my competition, I would have cue words. Like, let's say for the first part of my race, I might say fast and easy, so that I had a very simple thing to focus on that I knew triggered a whole physiological sort of orchestra behind me. That fast and easy meant all kinds of things for my body, but it kept me just in that moment. And the irony is, when you're mindful and in the moment, sometimes I could change those words. Like maybe at the last 25 meters, I was going to say finish strong, but in the race, I realized I'm so close, I could win. So I changed it like keep going, keep going. So there's a whole combination of tactics, I think, that help me be mindful.
And it's a team behind you as well. So what support system do you have behind you that helps you with mindfulness?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think I was lucky to have coaches early in my career to teach me about visualization and breathing and some of those techniques we talked about. For me, I knew my team, and I know that some people get really stressed at competition, and some people are much more calm. And so I really was mindful of who to go see when. You know, I if I was feeling nervous and anxious, then I made sure I reached out to somebody that might help me feel more calm. If I was maybe a little too calm, I might reach out to someone that needed me to get my energy going. So I think that everybody has their own wiring, their own way of being. And when you get to know your team, you know who to rely on when to sort of get what you need out of yourself.
How did you use mindfulness when you were swimming? How did you use it?
Well, I mean, I used it all the time. I used it to be present in training. I used it to get ready for competition. But what's interesting, Victor, is like all these years later, I am now an apprentice cook. So I work in a commercial kitchen. I'm in my 50s. I had never worked in a kitchen before. I started at 55 years old.
Don't don't tell your age. You look like you're in your 30s. Trust me.
Well, thanks. I'll stand behind it, but thanks, Victor. And listen, it can be very overwhelming and scary in a kitchen. It's dangerous. There's tons of equipment that could injure you very badly. And I have to be super mindful. Day to day, I'm still very much like in the moment, mindful. It's a constant reminder to be in the moment, live now, do what you can. You know, sometimes I feel discouraged because there's so much I don't know, but I have to remember that each day I'm learning stuff and getting better. And so each little step counts. So being present, being mindful of your own ability, being mindful of the environment around you and where the dangers might be or where some of the pitfalls might be. I think all of those things are super relevant in my life today.
So how did you find out about mindfulness?
I think it was really through, first of all, the art of visualization. So being able to kind of be calm and imagine a race in the future and just understanding the power of our mind, you know, to actually see something in our mind's eye that might come true later. I was very lucky also. I learned a little bit about meditation when I was about 16 years old. And meditation is really focusing on your breath and your breathing control. And it really brings you into this present moment here and now. And I think a combination of all of those things, sports very physical, racing can be very emotional, and meditating is very spiritual. And I think the sort of culmination of those three things and the intersection of them really brought home the idea of mindfulness for me.
Totally amazing work. Do you have any advice for future athletes about practicing mindfulness?
I think a really simple way is, again, what we started with, which is breathing. It's almost impossible not to be present if you're focusing on your breath. When you're breathing and you're focusing on it, then it really brings you here and now. And hopefully, if we're feeling some anxiety or something, we can calm that down and just really set ourselves into the mental state that we want to be in.
Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your story. I'm excited to have Natascha Wesch, a medical performance lead, here with us to talk about the importance of mindfulness. Let's start off with a quick introduction, an icebreaker, if you will. Please introduce yourself and what is your favorite sport?
Wow. Well, I'm pleased to be here, Victor. Thank you for having me. My name is Natascha Wesch. I'm a mental performance lead with Special Olympics Canada. And I work with all the athletes and coaches. And yeah, and my favorite sport, wow, that's a hard question because I love all sports. So my favorite sport to participate in right now currently is triathlon. But I used to be a rugby player and a hockey player, so those were my favorite sports. But in terms of like watching things, I love every sport. So any sport, I'm a big fan.
What do you think mindfulness is important for Special Olympics athletes?
Well, mindfulness can be like it can be a game changer for athletes, Special Olympics athletes, and there's a few reasons why. All right, so mindfulness helps athletes like stay present and stay focused on their performance. So it helps with focus and concentration because if an athlete can be mindful, it can improve their attention and their concentration in their sport, so they can stay focused on what they need to do. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is stress reduction. We all feel stress as an athlete, right? As athletes, we feel stress. We feel the pressure to perform. Have you been in a situation where you felt like you've had to perform or you've had to perform like on the spot?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So performing and competition can be pretty intense. And so mindfulness practices like such as meditation or just deep breathing can help athletes manage stress and anxiety. Can also help us regulate our emotions so we're not too high or too low when things happen. We can rebound and we can understand how to control our emotions, preventing us from being like too overwhelmed or in high pressure situations or feeling like underwhelmed even when things don't go well. So we're better able to manage our emotions. So those are just a few different ways how mindfulness can be really helpful for Special Olympics athletes. And of course, there's many, many more, and we can get into those if you want to, but those are just a few, off the top of my head.
What advice do you give to athletes to help them use mindfulness?
Right. So that's a great question. One of the things that we talk about, like sometimes athletes or even anybody, just people in general, think about mindfulness as this thing that you have to sit and meditate for hours on end. But mindfulness is not, I mean, yeah, that's a part of mindfulness, but mindfulness is not just that. It's about having different practices, different little strategies that you can use in various parts of your life. So it can be pretty transformative for athletes. And so some tips might be like in sports. So having a pre-performance routine. So incorporating mindfulness exercises such as maybe deep breathing or a body scan into your warm-up routine so that you can check in with yourself and be like, okay, I'm where I need to be to perform, whether that's a little bit more calm or a little bit more energized, but incorporating checking in with your body, checking in with your breath. So that's one tip or a one way for athletes to include mindfulness. In the moment awareness is another one. So practicing staying present during your performance. So it could be focusing on your breath or focusing on the sensations in your body rather than worrying about the outcome. So it's really about staying present. And then I'm sure you've done some visualization before, right? Some imagery before, like imagining what your race or your performance is going to be like. Well, that's an example of mindfulness as well, because you're concentrating and staying focused on what you need to do and staying sort of present on what you need to do and what's going to work for you. So imagining yourself winning or achieving a goal, right? So those are some examples of tips that athletes can use in terms of incorporating mindfulness within their sport. And we could also use mindfulness in our daily life. And I can talk a little bit about that, because it's not just about sport performance, right? We need to be able to be mindful in our daily life so that we're not getting overwhelmed by different situations. So it could be different things like a daily meditation, maybe even just a few minutes, starting off your day by grounding yourself, or maybe even ending your day by grounding yourself, doing a really short, maybe a 5-minute meditation to help you relax at the end of the day or get ready for your day at the beginning of the day. And there are many, many apps out there, many different mindfulness programs that people can use. Another thing that's really important in our daily life is mindful eating, right? Especially as an athlete. Like as an athlete, sometimes we're rushing from practice to competition, back to practice, and all these different things. And we don't really take the time to be calm and present with our food. We're like, I know myself, sometimes when I'm running off to training, and I'm sure it's the same for you, you're like, oh, I just need to like wolf down this banana or grab something and go fast. But mindful eating is really important because it allows us to be present with our food and digest and really enjoy the food as not just fuel for our bodies, but something that's really enjoyable and part of our nutrition, part of our what helps us grow and helps us be great athletes, right?
What are some obstacles that you face with mindfulness with athletes sometimes?
So I think for me, the biggest obstacle that I face is when athletes want a quick fix. And that's not just athletes, but anybody. They want a quick fix. And they're like, I did it once, I did the breathing and it didn't work. It's like, okay, well, you have to practice it, because mindfulness practices are skills. So there's different types of skills that you can use. And we've talked about a few of them, like breathing exercises or actual mindfulness sitting meditation. Another one might be a gratitude practice, like journaling, right? Journaling at the end of your day or at the end of an event, a tournament, or a game situation where you can practice what worked well. What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for all the things that I was able to accomplish. So sometimes the best way that I think about helping athletes understand how mindfulness practices can work is to think of them just like any other sport skill, right? Like you don't just get on skis and then for the first time in your life and you know exactly how to do it, or you don't just start playing a sport and know exactly how to do it, or you don't just jump in the pool and you know exactly how to do it. You have to work on those skills over time, and you get better and better and better. And the best way to work on those skills is consistency, and like regularity. And it's the same thing with mindfulness skills and different types of skills and different types of practices. So that, I think, is the biggest obstacle that I face, or at least that athletes will face when trying to integrate mindfulness, is when they want like this quick fix, right? And I'd like to say that anything worth doing really will take some time.
Have you incorporate mindfulness into your everyday life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the key things I think with mindfulness into everyday life is to start small.
It's like pacing yourself. It's all about moderation, it's all about steps. Step one, step two, you gradually do it. You're not an expert right away.
That's exactly right, right? Like mindfulness it's in an everyday life. It's just like a practice. It's just about being present. And you can use mindfulness in everyday life, such as I'm going to do maybe a morning yoga session. And instead of listening to music or instead of rushing through my yoga session, I might just be really calm and really focus on each movement. Incorporating mindfulness in everyday life could be like sitting down for a meal, like I said, sitting down for a meal with your family, but really enjoying the meal and paying attention to every bite and savoring every bite. and really being present with that. So it's starting small, like thinking about, okay, I'm going to, when I walk to school or when I walk to work, instead of putting headphones in and listening to music, maybe I'm going to be really present and just enjoy the environment. And maybe I do that for half my walk. And that might be something that helps me be mindful, and it helps me regulate my emotions and just be present, a little bit more present in my life. It could also be, mindful communication, and that could be in everyday life, but it could also be as an athlete. So mindful communication might be, listening, really paying attention to what, as an athlete, what the coach says, or as a coach, what the athlete is saying, and being open to hearing and sharing ideas rather than just jumping in one after the other. So those are some tips and some different ideas that how people can incorporate mindfulness into their everyday life.
What thought made it click in your head that, oh, this is mindfulness, this is what I'm going to practice every day? What sparked the idea in your head?
That's a great question. So for me, actually, I was introduced to mindfulness through when I was doing, I was part of the national program as a rugby athlete. So I played for our national team, and I used to get very, very, very nervous and very wound up before games, and get really like overwhelmed by things. And I was fortunate enough to work with somebody who was also a mental performance consultant. In fact, he was a sports psychologist who helped me focus on, did introduce me to some visualization, and also introduced me to simple breathing exercises. And he didn't say that it was mindfulness. He didn't say that it was meditation, but really they're just little mindfulness practices. And what I noticed, that by practicing visualization and seeing myself be confident in the game, seeing myself be calm, seeing myself perform, but then also using breathing exercises, when I noticed that my heart rate or my breathing rate or my nerves were going up, using those breathing exercises to just bring me down a little bit, just enough where, not where I'm obviously asleep, because that's not going to be good for performance, but just bring me down enough to take the edge off that nervousness so that I could perform. And once I realized, wow, that really works in a rugby game, in an international setting, playing against, top opponents, that I can carry over into my daily life. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
One more question to ask you.
Sure.
What steps do you take to make Special Olympics athletes feel calm and supported in their sports environment?
Wow, that's a great question. So there are several different ways, but for me, I'm working with not just the Special Olympic athletes, but I also have a colleague that I work with, Frank Vanderberg, who helps with as well with the Special Olympics Team Canada athletes. And we've helped the athletes develop some mindfulness practices, such as relaxation techniques. We teach athletes relaxation, such as deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and also just some general mindfulness exercises to help them stay calm. And that's really helpful, not just only in training, but helpful for them in performance, like in competition. And we've been doing that at the training camps, encouraging them to also do it in their own practices. The other thing that we do is making sure that we're trying to be really clear in our communication, and helping athletes create their own routines that they are familiar with. So preparing the environment for them by using routines such as evening routine or a morning routine or a pre-performance routine, so that they are familiar with, not trying to change anything, and that they're familiar with what they need to do and what works for them. So encouraging them to really focus on their own routines. And if some athletes don't have routines, is helping them prepare that. And then the last one, I think, we talk about sometimes that it's only athletes need to remain calm or only need support when things are going wrong. But we also want to celebrate achievements, right? No matter how small they are, to boost self-esteem, to boost confidence, and to boost that sense of accomplishment. And that's part of being mindful. In other words, making sure that you are present. So for me, as a mental performance lead, or for coaches, that we are present for the athletes. those are the key steps, I think, that help us promote mindfulness within the Special Olympics community and for Special Olympics athletes.
Wow. This has been an amazing episode with Natascha Wesch. Thank you very much for having us on this episode, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Victor. That was awesome. I'm glad I was able to share some insights. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
This Special Olympics edition of the podcast has been made possible through the support of Special Olympics Canada and the Australia Adult Neurodevelopmental Center at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, Canada.